Hey guys, so I'm back with chapter 3. I feel like I've read so many more chapters. Okay, so don't listen to me anymore because last time I definitely said I was going to come back and read 2 chapters this week and I didn't. So I'm going to try my very best to do two chapters next week because we literally only have 4 more weeks of school, and maybe even after school is closed, maybe I'll continue to read it over the summer since, I don't know what's happening with the quarantine, but we don't know. So, we may still have to be safe at home for a little while longer after we go into summer break. So maybe I will just continue to come back with a chapter a week, not sure, but next week I'm 100% going to try to do 2 chapters. Hopefully that's possible. And that way I can be able to get through the book quicker than if we do 1 chapter a week. Because there's, like I said before, there's 11 chapters, all great information. And I want to be able to actually dig into each of them. But 11 chapters means 11 weeks. So I definitely want to try to bring you more chapters. And I feel like if we do more chapters each week, then it'll be like better in your mind. So if I do chapter 3 and then chapter 4 in 2 weeks, or well, next week I'll do chapter 4 and chapter 5. But when I do that, it's more fresh in your mind as we keep going. It's not like so far apart from each other. You don't have to keep going back to figure out what happened in the last chapter. And I hope you guys are enjoying these chapters that I'm reading because, I'm enjoying them. I'm learning a lot about myself as I read this. So this week is chapter 3. It's called Epic Fail. So let's see what we have in this chapter. The F word. It strikes fear in almost every heart, right? Nobody thinks they're supposed to say it or talk about it or even admit it can happen. You know the word I mean. Failure. Y'all thought they meant something else? Inappropriate. Failure. There, it's on the page on purpose. It's important to get used to the idea of failing. Not because it's fun. We're not going to pretend anyone ever loves failing. We certainly don't. But it's a natural result of risk-taking. It's part of building confidence, and it's going to happen to you because it happens to everyone. Very true. Here we have a confidence close-up. Getting up on stage to act definitely made 12-year-old Helen nervous, but once she got into it, she usually calmed down. And then afterward, she felt so great. But when she was assigned a monologue for the huge show at the end of summer camp, she started to panic. It was so boring and so long. Helen studied and memorized and quizzed herself for days, right up until the moment she walked in front of the lights. She was drilling herself. The kid in front of her did his thing, and then it was down to Helen. She stood up, opened her mouth, and nothing came out. Yikes. Absolutely nothing. Her whole brain was a deep, dark hole without a glimmer of that monologue anywhere. This was not a case of one flubbed line or talking too fast or forgetting to breathe. This was a nightmare. The audience was full of parents. Her mother was shooting a video, but absolutely nothing would come out of her mouth. All she could do was lamely point her finger at the next kid and then stumble off the stage. She felt like she couldn't face her parents, grandparents, or even her little brother ever again. She had totally, completely, publicly failed. Most of us have had an epic fail like Helen's, and it's the worst. But when Helen's incredibly painful, humiliating experience wasn't all bad. Wait, what? You might ask. What could possibly be good about it? Well, there's actually science showing that failure of all things helps to create success. We know that may sound like a typically annoying adult thing to say. But when your stomach is in knots and your mind is lurching and you're free falling into the fail zone, you're not thinking, great, more success for me. You should, but still bomb the test. You study, but still bomb the test, Work hard on a paper, still get a bad grade. Run for student council, but don't make it. Strive to make that certain someone like you, but fail, fail, fail. There are so many ways to do it, and none of them feels good at the time. But failure really does have an upside. It's not so much the failing, actually, but the recovery and learning that can be really valuable. It's all part of that critical confidence building process we talked about earlier. The lessons of failure get stamped onto our brains, something scientists call imprinting. Where did I hear that word? Twilight. That's where I heard that word for the first time. Anyway, something scientists call imprinting more deeply than other kinds of experiences. So the lessons of failure get stamped onto your brains more deeply than other kinds of experiences, and it's called imprinting. When you fail, you can learn a ton of useful stuff if you pay attention. Quiz. How well do you understand the power of failure? Annie barely makes it to school on time every day. It's hard for her to get up in the morning. She stays up late, her stuff is scattered everywhere, her clothes are all over her room. Her mother drags her out of bed each day and helps her find everything, and then she barrels into school seconds before the bell. It's so stressful, and she hates getting there all sweaty and out of breath. Which of these will best change her habit? A, her mom stops waking her up. For 3 days in a row, she's actually late and she gets detention. Annie's furious at her mom. B, Annie convinces her mom to get her a new alarm clock that records her own voice on it. Awesome. Now she just has to remember to set it. Or C, Annie makes a detailed plan on graph paper to get organized the night before, pack her stuff, and get herself up. She'll start next week. So which one of those options will best change Annie's behavior? The answer, let's break it down. For Annie, option A, as ugly as it sounds, turned out to be the one that worked. Here's what happened. After those 3 days of detention, Annie didn't want to be late ever again. Her room's organized and her old alarm clock set every night. The cool new alarm clock had vanished under a pile of clothes by day 3, and the fancy organizational chart never took off. Failure made the difference. This could be a lesson for parents too. All right, and we have another quiz. What's your failure style? Anything sound familiar? A, you sob loudly into a furry pillow for hours and hours, and then you eat a carton of cookie dough ice cream. B, whatever. You're not even going to think about it. It never even happened. C, you feel sick. You want to puke, literally, wherever you are, and your head hurts. Ugh. D, you hole up in your room for a while, but you also know that after a few days, you and everyone else will move on. It's awkward, but whatever. E, you want to hide, maybe on another planet or another galaxy. You never ever want to show your face again. Or F, wow, you weren't expecting a flat out bomb, but it's cool. It doesn't bother you that much. I will honestly say mine is C. When I fail or when I do something that I'm like completely embarrassed, I feel sick and I want to throw up because I'm so embarrassed. Sometimes it happens before I even fail because I'm just so nervous, depending. Answer, let's break it down. If you answered A, B, C, or E, then join the club. That's how most people feel about completely screwing up. Horrible, physically sick, anxious, worried, and in denial. If you answered D or F, then you've started to figure out the secret to failure. By harnessing your thoughts and trying to see the big picture, you can cope with whatever happens. Once you've done that a bunch of times, you get braver, more confident, and willing to take more risks. Maybe try thinking about it like this. If you aren't doing some failing, then you're not learning. You're not growing or becoming stronger, and you're likely not taking those important risks. You're also not creating fun and adventure for yourself. You probably don't have to think hard to remember moments when you've really learned from failure. Failure will happen. The key isn't to avoid it. You can't. The key is knowing what to do with it, and we all need a cheat sheet to failure. Here's how to cope and grow. So we have here the top 10 failure fixes. 1, be your own BFF. Or at the very least, be nice to yourself. Remind yourself that humans fail. It's a design flaw in the species. Let yourself wallow a bit if that helps, and indulge in whatever makes you happier. Ice cream is good, or ask for a hug. Change the channel. This is number 2. What helps get your brain to a better place? Read a book, watch TV, listen to music, hang out with a friend, cuddle with your cat, kick a ball. Figure out a way to distract yourself from what's just happened. There's no need to turn it over and over in your mind. Put it into perspective. This is 3. I keep not reading the number. 3, put it in perspective. Think back to similar situations and remind yourself that you survived. Reassure yourself that usually people aren't talking about you, snickering about you, or staring at you when you fail. Are you constantly thinking of the time your friend tripped and spilled milk on the older kid's table in the cafeteria? Did you dump her? Unlikely. 4, ask for help. Science shows that one of the best ways to get past failure is to open up and share what happened to you. Talk to your parents, your friend, your favorite teacher, or your guidance counselor, or your social worker, Miss Smith. 5, mind your mindset. Try to think setback instead of failure, and view that setback as temporary, not permanent. It's a problem to be solved, not a life sentence. Ask yourself, what did I learn? What will I do next time? What will I totally not do? 6, rely on role models. Remember that list of role models you started? I was going to say in the chapter before, we talked about creating a list of role models and people that inspire you. So remember that list that you started? Dig around for cool failure stories and add them. Everybody who's anybody has failed. Put your own name there. List one of your own epic fails, including the strategy for getting over it. Think small. Similar to how you might handle a risk, break the reasons for your failure down into smaller chunks that are easier to handle, and then tackle those chunks one at a time. That was 7 if I didn't say. 8, repeat, repeat, repeat. A bit of practice, doing things over and over, makes them easier and helps protect against nerves. Ever heard of muscle memory? That's when your muscles go through the motions while your brain is distracted. That's a good thing. That's kind of like the saying, what practice makes perfect. If you practice things, or perfect practice makes perfect. And something that Miss McCord says is practice makes permanent. So kind of like repeating something over and over, practicing something exactly the way that you would do it might help you because it helps you to remember. Number 9, dive back in. As soon as you're ready, dust yourself off and stare at the failure straight in the face. Take another whack at it, determined not to make that same mistake again. Other mistakes, well, yeah, but not that same one, not that same exact one. And 10, the it could be worse, much worse list. This one's essential. You've got to keep your sense of humor when disaster strikes. Thoughts like, at least I didn't forget to put on pants and go to school naked after our roof caved in. Or, at least my family wasn't featured on The World's Biggest Dorks. Or, at least I didn't send a totally awkward message to the whole grade, can help remind you that it really could be worse. Reboot. So there's a picture here of a girl, and you can find this picture on my feed, whatever it's called, the timeline. And there's a picture of a girl who's saying, well, I screwed up, but it could have been worse. At least an elephant didn't drop on my head. And then there's an elephant that says, missed again, never get to have any fun. Reboot. As you can see, there are a lot of ways to reboot after failure. Check out these stories about Maria, Nell, Lisbeth, who fall into the black pit of failure and mortifying, never want to go their ways. Think about which escape route you like better. Okay, Maria. Maria is excited about making friends with a new group of girls. She has a reputation for being sassy and funny, so she thinks that's how she'll cement her place. In the midst of a group chat, she messages Carmen, the one girl she most wants to impress, making fun of what her friend Ashley wore to school that day. She said, maybe that's why she's not invited to Ben's party, LOL. She means to be funny, but is also a little mean. Then her phone blows up. She sent the message not only to Carmen, but to the whole group text. Yikes. Now everyone is mad at Maria and she feels like they all hate her. Well, one, she shouldn't have been sending me a text, but whatever. So reboot option 1. Reboot option 1. Maria is freaking out, so she decides to create a calm space. She turns her phone off. Number 2, which is change the channel from our list of 10 things you can do. She does beat herself up for a while and imagines she's doomed to a lonely life with no friends. But then she starts to remember that other people mess up all the time, on and offline, which is number 3. Put it in perspective. And they do not end up as outcasts. Reboot option 2. Maria is so mad at herself, she decides to kick a ball with her brother for a while. She knows that will make her feel better, which is option number 2, change the channel. Then what? She decides to figure out what to do next. There's clearly a solution, which is number 5, mind your mindset. Her goal is still to be friends with Carmen and Ashley. To do that, she takes it one step at a time, which is 7, think small. First up, apologies. She'll tell Ashley how sorry she is, really and truly. She talks to Ashley and then she talks to Carmen, which is number 9, dive back in. It's pretty awkward, but a few weeks later, things are back to normal. Okay, Maria. So here's Nell's story. Nell does great in school, especially in English and social studies. She really wants to nail math and be in the advanced class. She works with a tutor, sits with her mom doing drills, and gets pumped up for the placement test. But when the test is in front of her, Nell's chest feels like someone is trying to wring out all the air. She cannot move her hand and she's barely breathing. When the teacher asks if she needs help, she cannot even use words. She just shakes her head, hands on the blank page, and walks out the door. Everyone saw her. Everyone knows. She bombed. Totally bombed. Excuse me. Okay. Reboot option 1. When Nell gets home, she lounges in her room watching Harry Potter movies and eating kettle corn. I love kettle corn. Cries a couple of times, but tells herself it's okay, which is number 1, be your own BFF. It's hard to stop thinking about what this means. She's so dumb that nobody will like her. She'll never go to high school. She'll wind up jobless and homeless until she says to herself, knock it off. She tells herself that none of those things will happen. Then she deliberately asks her mom, who is one of her heroes, for help, which is number 4, ask for help. Her mom describes failing her driving test 3 times. Nell chuckles and feels better, which is number 6, rely on role models. Or we can try reboot option 2. Nell tries to calm down, but this test disaster keeps bugging her. She feels like there's only one thing to do. Keep on pushing. Do something about it. First things first, which is number 5, mind your mindset. She decides to go back over the practice tests and see what went wrong. Looking them over, she realizes that she can totally do the work. That was not the problem. Panic was the problem. She needs to take it step by step, which is number 7, think small. Instead of getting hit with the weight of the whole test at once, she could have just taken it in slowly, one question at a time. She wants to be ready for the next opportunity and emails her teacher about when she can try to get into that advanced class again. Nice job, Nell. And last, we have Lisbeth. Lisbeth is a great soccer player. As goalie, she gets to direct everyone throughout the game, placing them exactly the way she wants so that she can keep track of the ball. In the final game of the season, she is in the zone, calling plays and passes with perfect accuracy. Then, out of nowhere, the ball zips toward her. Her teammates rush to defend the goal, but she calls out, "Mine, mine, mine." She leaps toward the ball, ready to scoop it up midair and save the day as usual. Whoosh, it hits the net behind her. A goal for the other team. Game over, and she lost it. All her teammates groan and crumple in defeat, and Lisbeth knows that she cost them the game. This is why I don't like sports. Maybe Miss Smith needs some confidence. Reboot option 1. Lisbeth just wants to be alone. She won't talk to her teammates or her parents and runs straight to her room when she gets home, sobbing. But then she remembered something that helped last time she was upset. She grabs a book and gets her mind to another place, which is 1, be your own BFF, and 2, change the channel. By dinner, she tells her mother that she remembers when she let a key shot get by in a different game, right into the corner, and how she learned to block better because of it. Number 3, put it in perspective. She decides to ask her coach about working with her a little more. Number 8, repeat, repeat, repeat. And she moves on. And then reboot option number 2. Lisbeth rushes to apologize to her teammates and they hug her, chiming in with mistakes they've all made. The whole group hugs. The whole group turns into a memory fest of screw-ups, with their coach jumping right in. Then they all shout out all the things that could have really gone completely awry, which is number 10. It could be much worse, much worse. What if Lisbeth had broken her leg? What if a tornado struck the field? What if there had been a zombie apocalypse? They all laughed. For Lisbeth, that miss is going to loom large for a while, but her team will play again next week. Number 9, dive back in. Getting back on that field is the best thing for her because she will get swept up and not have much time to dwell. Nice. When failure strikes hard. In Kayla's Big Risk, which was, I believe, in chapter 1, when Kayla tried out for the team, she didn't make it. It was posted. She was embarrassed. Not making the team strikes her as the most humiliating fail ever. But in fact, you'll see that she discovers it was just a setback, and her attitude about it leads her to great places. Still, some failures do seem almost too much to bear. Remember Helen, the girl at the start of the chapter who froze solid on stage? She spent a lot of time thinking she was a loser. Failure itself can absolutely get etched in your brain, especially if you don't take a hold of it. Sometimes you will need to change that channel constantly. Even use the whole cheat sheet, and still it might take a long time. Helen ended up back on stage, if you can believe it. Helen's parents helped her by continuing to point out acting opportunities. Finally, Helen started doing small roles at school before eventually applying to a performing arts high school. She got in. She still gets super anxious before she goes on stage, but the repetition helps. It often calms her down to remind herself that she's already experienced the worst failure ever, and she survived. And she's still flubbing lines here and there and building confidence. So it isn't that mistakes won't continue to happen and that you won't fail again, but you should still try because you might fail less. If you don't try, then you won't be able to fail to learn. Use this handy dandy remote to change the channel in your brain. Look at this. It's pretty cute. So we have another comic that I'll post. Not posted for you guys to see. And Girls Call Girls of Action. I'm about to say call to action. Girls of Action. 16-year-old Olivia Lee is the head of the Gay Straight Alliance at her school. Olivia is Korean American and has never felt that she fits the typical stereotype of Asian girls. People often assume that Asian girls are quiet, hardworking, excellent students, particularly in math, and a little shy, even dainty. Olivia is very bold and assertive. Sometimes people have given her a hard time about being different, which used to hurt her feelings. Olivia decided to start an empowerment club for Asian girls in the middle school that's attached to her high school. She wanted it to be a place where they could be open, be rowdy, or complain about parents and homework. She made presentations to tell the girls all about it, but in the end, not a single girl signed up. Wow. Not one. At first, she was upset, but then, after a while, when Olivia broke things down in her mind, she started to realize that in her excitement, she probably talked more than she listened, and also failed to show them how powerful this club could be. She's working on a more inclusive message that emphasizes her belief that nobody needs to fit a stereotype. We are all enough, Olivia says. Instead of thinking of it as a giant, overwhelming disaster and giving up, she realized she could start to plan for next year and try it again with what she learned. It may have been a failure the first time, but she's determined to turn that failure into fuel to help younger girls. Nice. All right, that's the end of chapter 3. I'll be back next week with chapter 4, Become a Culture Critic. I'm interested to see what they're going to talk about in that chapter. But I hope you enjoyed this chapter about failure. I know I did, and I learned a lot from it. So I'll see you next week to talk about being a culture critic. Bye, guys.